They said my niece was dead on arrival, but they revived her. The doctor said that there was fluids coming out of her nose, her ears, her mouth, and they didn't think she would make it through the night. You know, I was never the type of person that blamed other people for bad things that came into my life. You know, somebody could say, I could see clearly that your mother passed away when you were 11, that you start getting into trouble. I never looked at it that way growing up. I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Cleveland, and I got in with a bad crowd. And then I ended up getting into bad things. You know, I stole cars, I broke into homes, going to court, being put on probation. It was kind of ironic about all that. Even though I believed in Jesus Christ and God, I still chose to do the bad things. To me, it was like a excitement. That's what brought me to White's. When I came to White's, I was like, you know, any other kid. You get taken out of the home. You go into a placement and it's scary, and I didn't want to be there. Never saw a cornfield until I came to Indiana. But one thing I did appreciate, and I found out quickly, that the people at White's Institute were very good Christian people that cared about kids and loved kids. And it took me about a year and a half to get implemented. And I stayed there to 77. I graduated. I was there 4.5 years. Went back to Cleveland. In 1978, my sister was killed in an auto accident. And I always knew in my heart about the Lord, or in my mind, but when it came to really being serious about it, is after my sister was killed in the auto accident. It shook me to my core. I had a sister that was 5 years older than me, a brother 8 years older than me. I was closer to my sister. And when my mother passed away, she basically became the mother of the household. I called my sister up one night and I asked her if she wanted to spend the weekend with us. We'd order pizza, movie, everything like that. And she declined, and I said, well, come on, let's do something. It's Friday. I'll go pick up Ann, who was my first wife, at the airport. So she finally said, okay. And I picked her up. We went to the airport to pick up my wife, who was getting off of work. And on the way back, I had my father's car. At that point, I had myself, my wife, my sister Mary Ann, and my niece Eva in the car with me, who was 10 months old at the time. And I realized that I had a flat tire, pulled off to the side of the road, went into the trunk to get a spare tire, and I realized it was flat. And I pulled over right by a bypass, and right down the bypass was a gas station. I went there to fill air up. And when I came back, as I was walking back up the hill, I noticed on the highway there was police lights, and I figured maybe they pulled over behind me, you know, wonder what was going on. And my wife and my sister and her baby Eva were in the car. Well, there was a drunk driver that was working at the time. He drove a scrap metal truck for a company in Cleveland. But when I came up, I saw a police officer with people around, and I right away ran up there, and I saw the car shattered into 1,000 pieces, and I saw my sister's body laying in the middle of the highway with a rug, with a blanket over her. And at that point, my mind was just going 1,000 miles an hour. I pushed the police officer out of the way. And then finally they contained me, put me in a police car. And I realized that my sister was killed instantly on contact. And then I was worried about where my niece was. My wife was behind the car and moved out of the way at the last minute. And there was a family. A guy was off duty. He was an EMS driver. And he was with his wife, and they were coming back from a movie. And he asked permission to my wife, my ex-wife, if he could take the baby to the hospital, because by the time the ambulance would get there, it could be too late. So he ended up taking my niece to the hospital, and the police got me in the car, and at that time I broke down, and it was rough. Went to the hospital. They had a neurosurgeon come in, and they said my niece was dead on arrival, but they revived her. The doctor said that there was fluids coming out of her nose, her ears, her mouth, and they didn't think she would make it through the night. Through the grace of God, she did make it through the night. She was in the hospital for over a month. They had to lift her skull off her brain because there was blood clots. And she made it. And from that time on, it was a long journey for me to get custody of my niece. I was 19 years old, but I always felt that family takes care of family, and through the support of my family, they agreed. They thought that I would do a good job raising her, and we ended up raising her until she was 19 years old, and she ended up eventually getting married and having 2 children of her own. And she lives a normal life. She doesn't have any mental illnesses, and I thank God for that. But that was the point that something that devastating brings you real close with God. And like I said, I've always had faith in God and believed in Him. And without Him, I wouldn't have been able to raise her and end up with my second wife, Eileen, who was a great foundation for me. And she was an angel sent to me. I look back and I would say to myself, if somebody said to me, what's life been for you? With all the tragedies that I've had in my life, I look at it and say it could have been a lot worse, but it could have been a lot better. But at the end of the day, I'm thankful for having Christ in my life. I truly believe without faith in God, you have nothing.